Guilt is a weight that will crush you, whether you deserve it or not. Maureen Johnson.
Thank you for
And
joining us for our 20th episode of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, as we dive deep to explore the topic that often lurks in the shadows of addiction. Today, we're speaking about guilt. But before we get into the main topic, allow us a moment to introduce ourselves. I'm Jackie of Akashic Energy Healing.
And I'm Elizabeth Maria of Elizabeth Maria Unlimited. And together, we're the hosts of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we navigate the power of personal growth and self-discovery through exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves. So, guys, as Jackie said, today we are talking about guilt. And really, the idea of guilt being a part of, the perpetuation of the addiction cycle. And so addiction is a labyrinth of intertwined emotions, behaviors, and consequences. And while the roots of addiction can stem from various sources, like we've discussed, one common thread that binds many individuals in its grasp is the overwhelming burden of guilt. And guilt has a peculiar power. It can both fuel addiction and be a byproduct of it. And it creates a spiral that seems almost impossible to break free from. So, how does guilt manifest in the context of addiction? So, guilt is like a silent partner in the dance of addiction. It often begins as a whisper, a nagging feeling that something isn't right. For many individuals struggling with addiction, guilt can emerge from a variety of sources: missed opportunities, broken relationships, harmful behaviors, or the betrayal of one's own values. This guilt, if left unaddressed, can become a potent force, driving further addictive behaviors as individuals seek to numb or escape from its weight. And so, just in this first kind of introduction of how guilt can, fuel this cycle of addiction, I was, immediately brought back to a time when, guilt would actually keep me out. Because, as I've discussed before, I was a kind of user that went on binges. I would, just wait for the time, and then I would go, and I would just be running for like 2 or 3 days or whatever. And I have this really clear memory of, like, I was trying to get home. I was trying to get home to my family, and so I got as far as like the entrance of the subdivision, and it was guilt. And I mean, I can like see it now. And then it was just like these feelings of like, just like, family dinners and things that I had missed, while I was on this binge. Like, it just like weighed me down so much that I literally turned my car around and went back out and continued that binge, because I couldn't. It was like I felt so guilty and so low, I couldn't face it, or I felt that I couldn't face it. And so for me, I know that guilt has been an emotion that has weighed me down to the point of, just continuing to want to numb and run over and over again.
Wow. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. And I agree in the sense of how guilt has such a huge impact on choosing to come clean, because coming to face, you know, the things that you did in the state of addiction, and addiction lasts for years and years and years. And going through that, I know for myself, was kind of the most devastating thing to do. So I get that keeps you out, and it did for me as well. So guilt actually becomes both the cause and the consequence of addiction. And it's a vicious cycle, and people end up turning to substances or behaviors as a way to alleviate the guilt they feel. But these very actions often exacerbate their feelings of shame and remorse. It's just this self-destructive spiral that can be incredibly difficult to break. And for me, the spiral, and I kind of relate to your story a little bit too, but I always had a kid or something to pick up. So there was always that, I don't know, something that I would make me stop. And then I would sit there next to my child feeling so guilty and so remorseful. And I'm there and I'm still present with them, but I'm not in the right state. And I shouldn't be, you know, necessarily with them. It wasn't, the drugs weren't around them at that time, especially, but when they were those small of ages. But yeah, it really kept me incredibly guilty for a long time. And I wouldn't even face it. I just dissociated quickly because, as we've talked about, I'm a master dissociator. And it wasn't until, you know, the more recent years to walk through the shadow and face that, and face the trauma that it has caused the kids. And I'm openly discussed addiction and addictive behaviors with my children. They have parents in other situations that are also suffer from addictive tendencies. So we're really open about it in my family, and it has helped the healing process. And I'm lucky to say that I have been able to heal those relationships with my children and come clean and, you know, alleviate that guilt. And the universe tends to allow me to do that. It gives me the opportunities in my life to be able to make up for some of my past mistakes. And I really, that is something I'm so blessed in the universe that I've been able to do that for the people in my life, because I know a lot of people don't always get the opportunity to make amends for some of the things that they did. And I have been able to do that with my life. And I'm so incredibly grateful that I have been able to.
You know what, Jackie? I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I am also just beyond almost words at the gratitude that I have that my daughter and I, you know, have the relationship that, you know, that we have today, because you know, the reality of addiction and the reality of my addiction meant that I wasn't always present there for her, not in the way that I, you know, really wanted to be. And, you know, but because I have been able to, and folks, we're going to get into, you know, some ways to begin to alleviate these energies. But really, before I was cognizant of what was keeping me in this spiral, you know, I just, like, I couldn't face it. I couldn't talk about it, you know, or anything, because it just hurt so bad. And, you know, so I just kept on until I was really, you know, able to begin to untangle myself from this web of guilt. And so, you know, moving on to kind of this next topic, because neither of us like to sit in the problem too long.
We are solution based on this show. That is the headline.
Yes. And so, you know, how can you, if you were someone who, you know, is in this cycle, I like to call these negative cycles hell loop. You know, if you're in this hell loop of guilt and shame, you know, especially, and we're focusing specifically on guilt today, one of the first steps is to acknowledge and explore the underlying sources of the guilt, right? So this can involve delving into your past traumas. You know, with that, I definitely recommend working with a professional. I mean, at least I needed to, you know, any type of unresolved conflicts or any deeply held beliefs about oneself, right? So, guilt can be like, oh, I was just born bad. I mean, I went as far as thinking that at times, like, this is just a part of who I am, this horrible, and that really kind of goes into shame as well. But so through therapy and through self-reflection, so just being able to look at, some of these underlying sources, right? We can begin to understand where the roots of guilt develop and then create healthier coping mechanisms to address those feelings, right? And so self-awareness is the cornerstone to the healing process. In psychology, they call it metacognition. It's the ability to be able to like lift yourself out of that hell loop and begin to see it for what it is, right? So it's this idea of shining light on our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, so we can gain some clarity to begin to make positive changes in our lives, right? And another, way to begin to heal is building strong support networks. So that's, through friends, family, or support groups. I really am a proponent for a group, any type of, so I like the idea of support groups, and just being able to speak your truth in a room with other people that are trying to make some healthy choices for themselves, and also, of course, cultivating your relationship with, a spiritual, cultivate your spiritual understanding about yourself. And that can definitely help you to form empathy for some of your past choices. And so, going back to this idea of self-awareness, one of the ways that I have been able to transmute some of, well, actually all of this energy, because I do not feel guilty for my past, they're in the rooms, they say, we will not regret the past nor shut the door on it. And I definitely do not regret or feel guilty about, and I mean, guys, I've done some fuck shit when I was, just to keep it real. I mean, but, today.
Elizabeth was getting crazy.
I know, right? And just to, say that, man, I mean, one, like if I can walk through the dark night of the soul and the darkness that I have been able to walk through, the one, anyone can do it. I know, but it's about becoming aware of those patterns. So just, first being able to kind of lift yourself above it and see it without, making judgment calls on it, just looking at it and being curious about it. But another way that I have been able to transmute this energy has been through my writing. And so I wanted to share with you guys.
Yay.
Okay, folks. So tonight I would like to share y'all a poem. And this is one of the ways that I have been, able to transmute this energy, especially the energy of guilt, is to write about it. And this is actually from a book of poetry that I'm working on right now called Cracked But Not Broken. Notes on coming home. It takes 5 nights and countless tries to finally get out. Only one whose life was on the brink can understand the significance of this. Making a plan without the primordial brain attacking and overthrowing reason, intellect, personal morals, skirting past family, the justification, mental manipulation of self, of others, by others. Mostly, though, it's denial that turns cells into stone walls, which no one can penetrate. Denial that diminishes thought, memories, until the smoke screen is thick enough to choke out all that is held sacred, such as time with one's daughter so she can show you her new cooking skills. Celebrating St. Patrick's Day with a dear friend. These commitments are forgotten, swept into a lockbox with regret scrawled across. Sometimes it feels like a line has been crossed, a cliff had been fallen over, and in this void, life is a far off and unfocused amid those who have turned from the sunlight of the spirit, those who have turned to demons whispering, just one more, my pretty, just one more. And so there, that's just some of the ways that I've been able to, work through some of this energy, because folks, this is some dense, energy that we're talking about tonight, this guilt. And yeah, thanks for letting me share that. And it feels really good to be able to get it out.
Thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful. And I was kind of like closing my eyes as you were reading it, and it was just so, I don't know, raw, I guess the word is, because it's when you know, I guess is the best way to say that. And you're right, only the ones that know would understand the depths of that. So thank you for sharing some of your work. It touched me.
You're welcome. And as I move forward on this, I mean, honestly, writing, I collected poems like all through Walking Through My Shadows, and really it's been since about 2017, so I have
See a poem book in your future, maybe.
Yes, there will be
a book of Elizabeth's poems, from journey from darkness to daylight. I think we even have a titled episode that was like that, but
yeah,
I like it because it's like, I don't know, you could kind of see the evolution of the mindset shift through your perspective and the way the poems would change. So that could be something really interesting to think about in the future.
Absolutely.
So we do want to give some other solutions for anybody out there that is continuing to struggle to deal with guilt. And I'll give you there's about 10 here, but I'll split them up between me and you, Elizabeth. I'll talk about the first half here, and then I'll let you kind of finish it off there. But really, it's the first one you want to do is you have to face the feelings of guilt. I mean, we have to release the feelings of guilt by talking about them, sharing, being honest, confessing. I mean, confession and unburdening your soul. This podcast is like my confession. And in my life now, I no longer feel the need to continue to share with other people. If they're interested, I'm like, podcast. My whole life's there. You'll hear it there. Like, honestly, like it's so therapeutic. And if you need to just get a recording device and record yourself talking, writing, so many ways to get it out that you don't necessarily need another person, that you can kind of start to lift the weight of the guilt that you have, because it's really heavy, and you start small and you kind of build off that. And I know we had like a full show on forgiveness, and that's really the next step here. Is we are way harder on ourselves than we need to be. So we really need to stop judging ourselves so harshly, especially when we're talking about keeping our vibration at a good state. Like, addiction has those up and downs. So if we want to keep ourselves in a balanced state, if we can get rid of the judgment on ourselves, it would really help to keep our energy levels and our vibration kind of at that equilibrium.
Yes.
Another way, and probably pretty crucial, is that you need to understand where the origination of this guilt came from. And if you're like any of the rest of us, there are so many layers of it, and it continues to get and expand. And you really want to understand the reason that you feel guilt, and you want to rationalize it. Is this reasonable? Is it appropriate? Is it still something that's worth holding on to? I mean, is it something that is your guilt? Is it other people's guilt? And we know there's 14 generations of DNA that's stored in our bodies. Some of this guilt, not even ours. So emotional intelligence is really important to have, so that we are able to understand what can be released and other things that we need to work through a little bit deeper. And then, changing behavior that's related to the actions, or the actions that are triggering these feelings of guilt. And this will help for the remorse to kind of cease. And then we can, well, simply put, if you're doing something and it's causing you to feel guilty, then you need to stop doing it, and you'll no longer have that reason to feel guilty. Easier said than done. We just, yes. We know this is probably the biggest step, trying to just get over that hurdle. But next one, I'm kind of really, I guess for that one, I'm thinking like, it's just such a big step to relate to. And I'm thinking about your story as I'm reading this, but moving on, you want to just clarify new values for yourself and take realistic actions. And instead of really dwelling in the past, focusing on the past too much is really going to continue to keep you in that state. We're positive about a positive future, but we don't want to live there either. We're really trying to sit with these emotions so that we can feel them and we can release them, and we can do things to improve our state going forward. And it is about, in my opinion, consistency. And it's a daily show up. You have to show up for yourself every single day, and you send yourself love. And I mean, that's the first 5, and I'll let you kind of take us out.
Before I forget, just like on 4 and 5, so changing the behavior, as we talked about last week with, when we, was it last week or the week before now, with the history of cocaine and, social history to harm reduction, that, changing the behavior, if it's too big of a step for you to say, you know what, I'm never going to do this again, then, just say, okay, I'm going to, stop for today or something, or just, you know what I mean? Or lessen it a bit, or, however you can, start changing your behavior in just little baby steps. I mean, and what else just kind of, just popped into my head was, even if, like, let's say you're someone that always gets a 6-pack, on the way home from work, and you want to change that behavior, just drive a different way home. Even something as simple as that can help, like, begin to shift those neurotransmitters, from being in that default, right? That automatic kind of negative response, to begin to do something a little bit different. So that can kind of, make it seem just a little bit easier.
I think that's a great tip.
Yeah. And then also about clarifying new values and, just taking positive action. I was thinking about, the Buddhist saying, like, if you have one foot in the past and one foot in the future, then you're pissing on today, right? So,
yeah. It is hard to stay in the present. And I do love to give myself a healthy visualization of what my future looks like, but, not as a way to avoid an escape from the present moment. And it's been my longest life journey, and it'll continue to be ever present. But and that's the thing about the consistent behavior. Even if it's just 5 minutes of meditation, no matter what I do today, no matter what I do in any day, I will guarantee I will do at least 5 minutes of meditation. And that's the one thing you do. You can 100% do more, but at least that. So give yourself that, like Elizabeth said, that at least this is, I can do this. That's a goal for the day. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Consistent behavior starts to change mentally in your mind, and then it's easier to do other consistent behaviors.
Absolutely. And that, yes, consistency, because I know that is the energy. I mean, one of the energies that I'm working on, in this present moment, is being consistent with the things that honestly bring me joy. It brings me joy. I did 10 minutes of meditation earlier today and took a walk, and that was like, my consistent.
It can be a walk. It could be, you could be out there mowing your lawn and just having a little conversation with the grass and saying, you know what, I'm just going to, on this lawn mow, I'm going to release intentionally, I'm going to release anything I don't need, anything that's not serving me. Just say that, and turn your lawn mowing into an intentional act of release.
Right.
And it's that simple. It is. It's like, it really is, if you do put that intention into it. And I think we have
Absolutely.
1,000 examples we could give you, but we'll continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move forward. For number 6, it's practice forgiving others and learning to forgive yourself. And we have a whole podcast on forgiveness, like Jackie said. So go listen to that if you need more examples. And also, apologize, right? And because that can be a way, and just like Jackie was talking about, just speaking it out loud is a way to help dissipate some of that energy. So is there something that you can say or do in order to try to show that you are willing to make peace where there has been hurt, conflict, or any type of disagreement? And so just like finding that common ground, be willing to look at, I mean, I really believe that the beginning of dissipating the dense energy in ourselves is being able to form empathy for other people, which comes from being able to shift the perspective from the self. Because addiction is a pretty self-involved dis-ease of the body, right? And so being able to shift that perspective and begin to see from other people's perspectives can really help that. And then 8 is to let go, right? And I mean, folks, like all of these steps, I mean, it's it's hard, it's like let go or be drugged, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the quote is, but let me tell you, I have held on to shit for a long ass time. And but when you do finally let go,
I know. And what I think about with this one is like, do we really think that other person even knows that we are carrying any sort of resentment or hate? Like the only person that's choosing to stay suffering is us with this, this animal. It's funny because I'm like, the person probably just living their la-di-da life, not giving a shit.
Right. And again, that's where, those that are, suffering from the dis-ease of addiction, it's a very self-focused, state to be in. And and so most of the time it just honestly ain't that serious, it's like, and so letting go just in all regards, I mean, it is just like when you finally do it, it is just amazing how, I mean, I know for me how much better I feel in my life. Just like, okay, this was the past. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it today, except for, like Jackie said, like make some new choices, be consistent with those
Learn from the mistakes. Learn the lesson, move on, let it go. That was what it was trying to teach you to begin with.
Yes. And then number 9 is, was there a legitimate cause for your past actions that was beyond your control at the time, right? And this one, and folks, this is from a I forgot the name of the website, but it's like taking the elevator up or something. But and if anyone's interested, we can email you the name of the website that we got these 10 steps from. But this one, I kind of don't agree with this, because it says like perhaps you've hurt others while you were either experiencing untreated mental illness or as a result of active drug or alcohol addiction. And so if your behavior was influenced by substance use, then you should give yourself some slack with regard to judging yourself. And yes, I believe that that we can be our own worst enemies, and that self-judgment, I know for me, was another way that my addiction, like it perpetuated it. But I also feel that acting out in ways, in unhealthy ways towards other people, and addiction do not have to be exclusive partners. And I think that sometimes people I've seen, will kind of use this as a way of bypassing the severity or minimizing it, like, oh, I was just fucked up. Well, no, you weren't. That energy of, violence or whatever, that was in you regardless if you were fucked up or not.
Exactly. Because good people, they are self-harmers.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not actively going out to hurt other people.
Right. And so that, so that kind of energy. And again, I mean, I'm on the belief that everyone is evolving right now and that everyone is, a fractal of God energy. And so inherently we all are love and good, but that can be so layered by this dense, dark energy that, people, it's kind of, it's like that self-fulfilling prophecy of just becoming that demon, it's like become that, just warped version of yourself.
But I wanted to just say quickly, I wanted to say quickly, because you were mentioning about the legitimate cause for the actions. And, when you're in a codependent relationship with another user as well, you can sometimes become so, intertwined with them that you're feeling guilty about hurting them or doing, changing your behavior because it's going to hurt your partner or something like that as well. And it's not, that isn't like the first thing that came to my mind when you said this paragraph.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we know that there's like and that's why at the beginning of this, podcast, we talked about how it is just so multifaceted and it's so interwoven, all of these, so unwinding yourself from this type of guilt hell loop, it's going to take time, right? And different strategies may work for some people and may not work for others. So continue to keep trying different ways to kind of unravel yourself from this type of dense energy. And the last one that I wanted to mention is avoid shame. And so shame is like, okay, so shame is something that we think is inherently wrong with ourselves, right? So it's the basic feeling of being inferior, right? And so it's like the perception of oneself as a failure or feeling unacceptable by others. Whereas guilt is like being feeling low or bad for doing something,
accountable, right? For doing something.
And so you can feel like, so in that way, it's like guilt's a little bit higher on that emotional scale than shame, because shame is just like you're fundamentally flawed and fucked up, whereas guilt, I did something that really sucked, it really sucked. It really sucked that put you through this, then and so, but that kind of feeling, and not and I know, like, from my perspective, saying I'm sorry over and over again but still doing the same behavior, I mean, those types of apologies are empty. But if it's an apology,
and that's manipulation, gaslighting, FYI.
Yeah. And so apologizing and shifting the behavior, and staying consistent with that shifted behavior will dissipate the feelings of guilt. And the other thing that just popped into my head really quick before I turn it back over to you, Jackie, is the idea of doing esteemable acts raises your self-esteem, right? So by being consistent in the new habits, the new ways of interacting in a healthy way, being consistent with that will help raise your own self-esteem. And so you won't fall into these traps of guilt and definitely shame. So
I agree. And I did have, there was a couple instances, mostly from junior high, where, mean girl stuff. And there was one girl that I was really like, she was really nice to me. And then as soon as the popular kids liked me, I was really mean to her. Like, not like, I won't get into any specific details, but I had ended up later in life going to a friend's girlfriend's house, and it ended up being her house. And I was like, didn't want to go in, and I asked her to, like, come here, and I was able, I'm like, she was all excited and wanted to invite me in. I'm like, how could you even like talk to me after the way I treated you? And I just apologized. I'm so sorry. We didn't become like lifelong friends again after that, but I was able to like I said, the universe loves to allow me the opportunity to clear my karma, but she showed me in the way her behavior towards me showed me, kindness in a situation that I don't know if I could have been that bigger person. And it really just showed me this genuine person. And it really shifted my perspective on people. And I felt, I was so guilty. I couldn't even like walk into the house. I was just like, oh, fuck. But
Right. Yeah,
it was not related to my addiction. I mean, the biggest one for me in addiction was the one with the kids.
Yeah.
I was more of a self-harmer, so there wasn't a lot of outside guilt except for the family struggles.
Yes. Same here.
I know that's not the case with a lot of people. I know what people do in order to fulfill these needs, and no judgment on anybody else. I'm just grateful that, that wasn't part of my journey in this lifetime.
Well, I was going to say that, what you said about and thank you, Jackie, for sharing that experience, and I mean, because I mean, these topics are, some of them are pretty, well, actually all of them, like we get vulnerable.
It's not ours if it's not vulnerable.
Yeah, but just, the fact that you had the chance to apologize, to walk through that guilt, that feeling, and not run from it, but to that really is part of the shedding, like what we were talking about here is
because I had always felt guilty of my behavior because I knew I was doing something wrong. I just wanted to be popular more than what my inside was telling me was right and wrong. And I felt guilty from the moment it happened. It was like, and I had to live with that. And I'm somebody who just like lives in her head about things like that, and it lives rent free there until it gets resolved. And I was luckily able to, and gracious to her to teaching me, how to actually treat people. And I already knew that, like I learned it before a little bit, but yeah, anyways, we do want to just emphasize to everybody that recovery is possible. And no matter how deep the spiral of addiction may seem right now, there is always hope for healing. And it's essential for individuals to recognize that they're not defined by their past mistakes or their struggles, their addictions, their choices, their behaviors, their friends. Every step that you have taken towards recovery, no matter how small it is, no matter what anybody else says, it's showing a testament to your strength and your resilience. And there are so many individuals that are going through this, that are struggling, that are working together, that are coming together to support each other through these journeys, through shows like this, through support groups, through Facebook. There is so much out there that we can really rely on each other to get through this. The shame has to go, the guilt has to go, the judgment has to go. This is an open, safe space so that we can come to a place of healing. And it's just so important to just, really forgive yourself.
Yes. And remember, guys, that, beginning to understand, just again with the idea of, rising above that loop, and learning and beginning to see the interwoven, unity of the mind, body, and spirit connection. I believe that this is the first step towards cultivating, like I said, empathy, right? Empathy for others, but empathy for yourself, right? Compassion for yourself. And just, and this is how the healing process begins. So, yeah.
Hey, woman to that.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Oh, what a good show today, guys. Thank you for joining us. I think we'll wrap it up now. Hey, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Just love yourselves out there. Love yourselves,
every day. I mean, just keep showing up for yourself. It is, it starts to feel really good after a while. I know it's a challenge at first, but after a while, it's so like, it's a me day and it's a cuddle day and a whatever day. It's a Jackie day, and I'm going to have a Jackie weekend, and I hope you guys all do too. So thanks for joining us today while we take time, and we wanted to shed some light on guilt as the silent driver of addiction. But we want you to know that your comments and perspectives are so important to us. So please continue to reach out. If you have any questions for us to explore in our show or any other questions concerning our podcast, Email us at sexdrugsandspiritualitypodcast@gmail.com.
And guys, if you'd like to contact us about our individual client offerings, please follow the below link and be sure to mention us if you heard about us on Spotify. And we look forward to connecting with our community at 11:11 p.m. EST every Saturday on Spotify to explore and integrate the shadow side of our reality.
Love and light.
Love and light, guys.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website.